everyone. Also from my side, welcome to the first International User Group meeting. Very excited to see so many people attending this one. As Hannah mentioned, I'm a product manager at Personio, but actually how I started out was in automotive engineering. So I started building race cars in university and designing robots, and eventually made the switch to software engineering and joined Personio mid-March last year. So right when the pandemic took off. So I had a quite interesting onboarding back then. But I really joined Personio to start the integrations team, which back then was only me essentially, right? But the cool thing is by now we've grown quite a bit. We have, I think, around 15 people in the team now. And what I really enjoy is that we have people from 9 different nationalities in my team and working across 3 different time zones, which, as you might imagine, can be tricky at times as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to sharing the plans that we have for Q3, both in the integrations team, but also the other product and engineering teams at Personio. And later on, as Hannah mentioned, we'll do a small deep dive into the marketplace at Personio and the tools that we integrate with. Now, before we jump into the exciting topics that we have coming up for the next weeks and months, I wanted to share how we sort of structure this roadmap presentation. So I'm sure you're all interested in knowing when specific features you've all been asking for are planned for release. So that's why we sort of have 3 sections in this presentation. First, I will briefly go through some of the highlights of the last weeks. So features that either are already available for all customers or to a limited set of customers and being tested in beta. Then we'll take a look at some of the features that are scheduled for the next weeks and months. So sometimes throughout Q3. And then at the end, on a high level, we will look at the broader topics that Personio is looking to work on during the rest of 2021. So without further ado, I'd say let's look into some of the features that Personio has released. And as mentioned, obviously, these are not all features, but just a small subset that we thought might be interesting to highlight within this presentation here. So let's kick it off with recruiting and one of the features that is already available to all customers. So maybe some of you have already tried it out yourself, and it's about sub-company career pages. So as you might imagine, larger companies or larger organizations, oftentimes they're organized with multiple subsidiaries. And they might then share the same Personio account, but from an outside perspective, the different sub-companies might look and feel like distinct companies, right? Maybe the sub-companies even are communicated as sort of competitors to the outside, right? And this might then be tricky when they also share the same career page. Because consequently, the sub-companies also have their own employer brand, their own recruiting processes, and need to make sure that their brand is also reflected in the hiring process. So now with this new feature, in Personio, you can equip every single sub-company with an individual career page so you can publish positions under the specific brand. So for each sub-company, you're now able to customize the design, the domain, and only display job listings that are tied to the specific sub-company. And now sort of looking at it from a broader picture, together with the sub-company messaging that we released earlier this year, you can now really make sure that throughout the whole candidate journey, from the first touch point on the career page throughout the recruiting process, you can stay on brand with your specific sub-companies. Next up, moving on to absence tracking and hours. So as some of you may know, Personio started out in Germany. And for German companies, it's typical that absences are tracked in days. However, in many countries outside Germany, absences might also be tracked in hours, right? For example, I think in Italy, this is fairly common. And this is why this has really been a highly requested feature to also allow users to track absences in hours. So obviously, we want to make sure that everyone can tailor Personio to their specific needs. And that's why our absence management team has started working on this already quite a while back. So now quite recently, the first iteration of hourly absences was released to beta. And we call it absence tracking in hours light, because really this is the first milestone on a sort of longer journey of building a robust hourly absences experience. So what can you do with the current light version of hourly absences. You can create absence types of the type hourly in the absence settings. Then similar to regular absence types, you can define in the access rights which user can actually request which types of absences. And then they can just, as you see on the screenshot here, track their absences in hours, manage these absence types, and you can make sure that there's transparency of colleagues' availabilities, even when they're only out for a short period of time. And as mentioned, really, this is just the first milestone. We're continuing to work on this. And some of the upcoming milestones are that we're planning to add hourly absences to custom reports as well, and also entitlement management, which I will talk about in a minute. So one of my personal favorite topic, the Personio Marketplace integrations. Now, I will not go too much into detail on this slide, given we'll have 30 minutes later on to talk about this. But for now, let me say that after the launch of the marketplace that we had in April, we're continuing to add more and more integrations, especially focusing on integrations that are relevant for international customers to the marketplace. Now, just calling out some specific integrations we added recently that might be interesting for you. Workable, which is a fairly common applicant tracking system. We just released the integration with them 2 weeks ago. So now from new hires in Workable, you can automatically create new employees in Personio and transfer the data from the candidate profile to the employee without manual copy and pasting. And another one that I think is pretty cool is HR Rider, which is also a fairly popular performance tool, mostly used in Spain. Now, this is things that are already released or released to a small subset of customers. Now let's take a look at some of the features that our teams are currently working on and planning on releasing in the next weeks or months. Coming back to recruiting and the topic of career pages, I think for many of our customers and many of you, hiring internationally is simply part of the job, right? But to attract great talent across countries, the candidate experience really must be authentic, right? So when you're, for example, looking for candidates in the UK or Nordics, having a .personio.de domain maybe might feel a bit weird, right? So this is something we noticed in the past. That's why soon in our recruiting product, we will make it possible to choose between .com and .de. So you'll be able to address different markets with your career page. And this will hopefully make it easier for you to win and find great talent no matter where they come from. Moving on to the reporting functionality in Personio. So maybe some of you know custom reports. I think it's really a powerful reporting engine that makes it quite easy to access custom data and sort of visualize it in different ways. The thing is, at the moment, how access rights work with custom reports is sort of following a all or nothing approach. So when you want to share a specific custom report in Personio with someone, they will essentially have access to all custom reports, not only one specific one. However, when we talked to our customers, it became pretty clear that a frequent use case is that a specific person needs access to one specific report sort of on a recurring basis. For example, the finance department needs this one specific report that they need to access like once a month to do a certain job, right? So in order to tailor for this, we are adding a new sharing experience that allows you to share individual custom reports with one or multiple colleagues. So when you choose someone, as you can see here on the screenshot, that person will only have view rights to that specific report and no of the other custom reports, but they will also be able to export data for further processing outside the Personio if that's required. So next up, on time tracking, this is also an area where we are continuing to make improvements, because we did have a pretty big release a couple of months back where we essentially completely rebuilt the time tracking experience in Personio. And then we also added rule-based alerts, added time tracking to the Personio dashboard. So there's already many improvements that the team has been working on in the past. And after this huge release, we get a ton of feedback, right? Positive and negative, and really try to listen to this, right? I know the team has done a ton of research, talked to many, many customers, because one thing we noticed after release is that there's many different patterns how employees track their times. So maybe someone is preferring to inserting everything at the end of the day once they already know when they worked and when they took breaks. And there's people that sort of only enter the starting date and then adding the additional time frames as they go about their day. And sort of making sure this time tracking experience works for everyone with different sort of usage patterns. We're now introducing this new functionality. So really trying to make it easier and faster to track working hours every single day. Because as of today, users have to add multiple time frames for the entire day, which requires multiple clicks and can cost a bit more time. And also editing breaks retrospectively can be tricky as well. If you know how it currently looks like, you sort of have this calendar view. You can add time frames where you work, for example, from 9 to 11, and then from 12 to 6. And then automatically it will calculate the break based on the gap that we have between both time frames. But it doesn't really allow you to directly address the break as a specific entity and make changes to that break. So this is what we're now addressing. As you can see on this mockup here, when you click on one of the days in the calendar, this will open up a dialog where you can essentially add work or break time frames. And each of those you can just adjust and really make sure that for any given day, the working hours and break hours are correct. And this will hopefully be more user-friendly and be also more flexible to accommodate for different usage patterns in Personio time tracking. Now, I talked about absence management and absence tracking in hours and mentioned it's sort of the first iteration, the light version, so to speak, right? So one of the subsequent releases will be about extending absence management with entitlement rules. So one limitation of the current version that is in beta is that you cannot create and assign accrual policies for absence types that are tracked in hours. For some of you, this might not be a problem. For example, if you're tracking sick days or maybe absences for a specific training, you might not even need accrual policies or entitlement management. However, there's also many reasons why you might want to add accrual policies to absences that are tracked in hours as well. For example, when tracking vacation in hours. So soon with this feature that we're currently working on, we will allow you to create and manage accrual policies for absence types that are tracked in hours, similar to how it already works today with absences that are tracked in days. So essentially, you will be able to define how many hours of a specific absence type a given employee is entitled to. And then when they actually go about requesting absences of that time, that will then sort of be reduced from the balance that they are entitled to and that you defined in the absence policy. Now, with integrations, I mentioned we added a bunch of new exciting tools in the last weeks, and we are sort of continuing on that trajectory. A couple of integrations I do want to call out. The first one being in payroll, especially when it comes to connecting your HR data to payroll. Oftentimes it involves either manual transfer of data, usually some kind of export and import. And this is one, annoying, and also can be error prone as well, right? So as an addition to our preliminary payroll that we have in Personio, that already makes the preparation of data easier. We will soon also offer an integration with Pento, which is a payroll tool that is sort of tailored for the UK market and quite popular over there. Then beyond that, two other tools that I'm really excited about to add to the Personio marketplace. One, we have Lattice, which is also a big performance and engagement tool. And then Raidu, they're offering a travel expense management tool that we are also going to integrate with Personio. So those are the features I wanted to call it specifically in the coming soon section. So keep an eye on the release notes. I think we don't have specific timeframes, right? Software engineering can be complex and there's always things that can go wrong. However, you can expect these features in the next weeks and months. So definitely keep an eye out. Now, lastly, looking beyond Q3 and sort of zooming out for 2021, what are the bigger themes that Personio will be working on? So one of the things we notice is that not only Personio is growing, but also our customer base, right? And the thing is, the more employees you have in your Personio account, the more data you also need to fetch whenever you load a specific page on the Personio web app. So this is something that we sort of want to work against, and we'll definitely invest time throughout Q3 to shorten loading times in Personio. So really make sure that you will have a fast experience when using the product, even when you have many, many employees. Second, as you can imagine, time tracking really is a core part of the Personio product. And as I mentioned, we are working harder to unlock further customer scenarios. In the future, we're working on flexible working schedules and enabling employees that they will also be able to track their times in these scenarios. Now, in a second, Desiree will walk you through the performance and development area in Personio. So I don't want to spoil too much, but let me tell you that there's exciting initiatives on the roadmap, such as the performance cycle builder. Lastly, as you know, we're adding more and more features to Personio in new areas, right, such as integrations, performance. And as the product is growing, there's this fear that it will become more complex as well, right? So this is another topic where we're really investing into to make sure that the usability is given, that you can navigate between different areas in Personio and really get your job done. So the user experience is also one of the broader themes to continue to work on. So that's everything I wanted to cover today with the roadmap. And Daniele, I'm sure we have a couple of questions from our listeners.
Cool. Well, first of all, I don't see any questions yet. So if you do have any questions about it, feel free to write them in the chat. But let me say, I saw absence tracking in hours, international career page domains, sharing custom reports, new integrations, so many exciting features that even I actually didn't know about some of these. So I'm very excited to see them coming. I'm sure the people are too. Maybe Matthias, until we get any questions from the viewers, I want to ask, what is the release that you are mostly looking forward to yourself? Maybe any integration in particular?
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to pick anything else than integrations, right? So that's sort of the topic I'm most passionate about. I will talk about this in the deep dive we're doing later. But we have around 20 integrations that are in development at the moment. And I cannot share everything, unfortunately, at the moment. But there's a couple of integrations that are among the most requested ones from our customers. And I can just say that we are looking into them, we're working on them, and also looking to release some of them in Q3. And maybe interesting also for the audience, when I joined Personio, the sort of integration ecosystem was rather DACH focused, right? So at the moment, I think 50% of integrations that we're now adding are actually outside of Germany and really tailored, for example, for Spain, UK, Nordics. So really trying to make sure this is sort of valuable for everyone out there. So that's something I'm really excited about.
Cool. Good to know. I see some requests coming in the chat, and maybe you've missed it in the beginning, but if you do have, this is for the audience, if you do have any feedback or ideas on how to improve Personio, instead of posting it in the chat, we would ask you to submit it in our community. That way we can keep track of the ideas and other users can also vote for them and we can let you know. There is a question also I see, if there is any integration planned with a Spanish payroll provider. I don't know if you can share any info about that, Matthias.
Yeah, so with payroll, it's a bit special because, there's many things you need to consider with payroll integrations, right? Because usually they require to be a bit more deeper And also the risk is much higher when something goes wrong, right? So this means when we're building payroll integrations, we need to be much more deliberate, right? So as you know, with Datev, this isn't something that was sort of developed within a few weeks and then just released, but rather something that one team was working on for quite some time to really make sure we are hitting that quality bar and we have a high quality of data, right? So this was sort of initially the focus, and now just sort of slowly we are continuing to sort of move into other markets, sort of now starting with Pento in the UK. So for Spain, I'm not sure if there's specific plans on specific payroll providers, but sort of I think it will happen at some point, right? It's just a matter of time. So when there's specific tools that you and the audience are already using, definitely reach out to us, maybe in the community even, and then we can sort of see how we can make that happen sometime in the future.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Matthias. Thank you so much.
Sure.